Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Steven Shevey of Brookfield is an independent candidate in Assembly District 14. The election is November 6th. Steven, welcome to WisconsinEye.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
You're a first-time candidate, so this is kind of new. So what's your number one issue, do you think?
My number one issue, I met with both the mayor of Wauwatosa and Brookfield and discussed what issues do we have in our district. And they told me of dark store theory. Never heard of it in my entire life, but it is a thing that big box stores are allowed to take a tax loophole, which that shifts the burden of property taxes onto our homeowners and small businesses, which there's tons of people who have already endorsed the bill to close this loophole, but yet neither of the parties have done anything to close it.
So you'd go to Madison if you're elected to close that dark store loophole?
100%. And the reason why I'm running as an independent is for that same reason. Neither these Democrat or Republicans are doing it because they get such a big kickback from these box stores.
Oh, okay. So does that mean you're not accepting any donations?
Nope.
From, what limits have you put on who can give to your campaign?
I believe a campaign should be run by the person who's running. So I've fully funded myself through my steam fitter work to run this campaign. It is difficult at times, but I feel, it gives me more of a drive because it's my own money, rather than some of these, like we saw in the Senate race with Leah Vukmir and Nicholson, that they had $46 million for our state. Right. That's crazy to me to spend that much money.
Okay. What's the other top issue that you found as you talked to voters in your potential district?
Foxconn, also the roads, and some on the more liberal side we have net neutrality.
Okay. So
that's also a thing I'm running on, is net neutrality.
Let's go back to your first issue that you mentioned, apart from the dark stores. Foxconn, tax breaks, tax incentives approved for this Taiwanese company, and now Kimberly-Clark wants the same type of benefits. What's your position on how much help taxpayers should give private companies?
It really depends on the company. Foxconn, I don't know much about Kimberly, for example. I would have to read that up. But for Foxconn, I know we're giving them a huge tax incentive to come here, but they're giving us 3,000 jobs right now with a promise of 10,000 later. I saw on there some are saying that the wages will be 53 grand a year. And that is a livable wage, I believe. And also with benefits, the only drawbacks is Foxconn's history of not fulfilling their deals, like in Brazil, India, and even in Pennsylvania. So I do have some concerns. Also, the fact that they are exempt from environmental statements, which we could leave ourselves open to another Flint, Michigan if we don't regulate it long enough.
So had you been in the assembly, would you have voted against the Foxconn tax breaks?
I think we do have to take a risk, so I would probably have voted for it, because nowadays you're not going to get manufacturer jobs unless we do make those tax incentives.
The gridlock in the Capitol over how to pay for highways, bridges, maintenance, and construction. How do you think we ought to pay for our highways in the future?
For the future?
Yep.
It's a hard task, because right now we have a set limit of how much we spend on our roads, and we may have to raise taxes if people want the roads to be better. Or I contemplated this thought, which is probably very popular with other legislators, but maybe it's time for legislators to take a cut.
A pay cut?
Pay cut.
Okay.
Instead of putting it onto the homeowners and other citizens of Wisconsin.
You said you're a resident of the district. Would you be willing to raise the gas tax or the registration fee or How do you feel about tolling as a way to pay for highways in the future?
I know tolling is not the way to go because it's an inconvenience for the first part and also another expense that people have to deal with who are trying to get a job, and I think it kind of gets that barrier from people getting a job or not.
Could you see yourself raising the gas tax to pay for highways?
As of right now, no.
No?
If we could see tax prices go lower, as in maybe we find alternative fuels, which I happen to have found, we could essentially do that then, which I don't know if you want me to go in depth on that.
Well, yeah, you've done some research on that area, so this is an energy area, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what have you found and what potential changes would you push for?
So up in British Columbia, there's a company that is extracting CO2 out of the atmosphere. So that will help with rising sea levels, help with controlling our pollution as well. And they convert that CO2 into fuel. So that can fuel our planes, our trains, anything that has a motor, essentially, with no converting anything. So you can just pour it right into your gas tank. And I believe that would be a better way, and if we put money towards making it more efficient, we could probably get gas down to $2 or so, which then if we did need to do a tax hike, the consumer will not feel that as badly, because right now we're paying, what, $3 something?
$2.65, $2.69, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
For regular unleaded?
Yeah, so we could be getting that 60 cents, and no one would know the difference.
So we could be on the verge of an energy revolution.
Yes,
kind of what
if
you're
we
saying.
invested in the technology there, and also bring jobs to Wisconsin.
There's a debate over whether we are funding our public schools adequately enough. This current budget has a big increase in state aid for public schools. Do you think, the voters you've talked to, do they want another big increase in aid to public schools in the next budget?
It's a 50-50. Some people, like my school district, Elmbrook, they are very successful and they don't need a big budget. But MPS, on the other hand, yes, MPS is giant, but it does need a big budget. Excuse me, sorry. I think that's when the government needs to intervene and look at where is this money going? Is it going to the classrooms? Is it going to the administration or to the teachers? Because the head of the administration is making $400,000 a year, and I don't believe that's right. I think they should be making a lot less, and same with anyone else in an administrative position. And bring it back towards the classroom and also to teachers.
The voucher program, the choice program, has grown from Milwaukee to Racine to statewide. Do you have a position on whether that should be expanded further?
No, I don't believe we should. Do you mean as using tax dollars to fund it, or?
Yeah, it's. Do you think the program that allows students to go to public schools with public dollars should be expanded further, or should it be cut back?
It should be definitely cut back, because we created public schools in the first place to have everyone equals rights to go to school. And if we started doing charter schools, some of them do not accept, as for example, my brother who has special needs would not be able to go to some of these charter schools. And I think that would very much hinder him in the ability to communicate to people, to interact with other people on the street and through social life if he didn't go through public schools. So I see that as a drawback, and we're going to create the haves and have-nots and take steps back.
You said you've talked to some of your local mayors in the district. When they mentioned dark stores, but do they also talk about levy limits?
Yes.
Levy limits have been around to control property taxes for 14 years. Based on what you've been told from these local leaders, is it time to continue levy limits, or dial them back, loosen them, or get rid of them?
See, that's where I think dark store theory would be a great asset if we close that loophole, because we could use that extra income from the big box stores to help out local governments and to do the services that they need, because you know, their expenses are going up, but their net, or sorry, I'm totally blanking. Wow.
That's okay. Their expenses are going up, and the demand for services.
Yeah,
Is that
the demand for service is going up too, which they don't have enough money to pay for those services.
Okay.
So I think by closing that tax loophole, we will be able to give back to our communities and give those municipalities the way to fund their services.
Does that mean levy limits should stay in place, or if they were able to close a dark store loophole, that they should still get rid of levy limits?
If we got rid of dark store loophole,
Yeah.
I think we should raise the levy limits accordingly to how much they're going to get from those big box stores.
Okay. The debate in the Capitol over corrections, the Department of Corrections budget. We have two prisons that were built in the 1800s.
Waupun and Green Bay.
That's right. And the question in the next budget is, should we begin to build a new state prison? Have you thought about that, your position?
Yes. I don't think we should. For the example, we should not be planning on incarcerating more people. We should be always planning on incarcerating less. And I think by opening up programs in Waupun and Green Bay, where the prisons are older, we could use inmates to actually get a real skill in painting, in electrical work, in plumbing, and such other things like that, updating the prisons.
Part of this debate is the argument whether we should legalize recreational marijuana or medical marijuana. Do you have a position on those?
Medical marijuana, I agree with. We should legalize it. For example, in the past 5 years, a group of veterans went up to Madison to talk to legislators because the pills that are taking, which are narcotics, opioids, it makes them funny and it makes them not able to do their lives. So for the sake of our veterans, I believe we should be open to the option of medical marijuana so they can live a successful life through it. But recreational, I am young, but I see the dangers of it. In California and Colorado, we see the rise in the black market for it. We see people getting laced marijuana, and that's where I think we should take a step back and look, can our state handle recreational marijuana?
The UW system budget, we've had a freeze on resident undergraduate tuition for 6 years. The governor would like that freeze to continue for 2 more years. Your position?
I heard it was it 4 or 2?
When I covered the governor last Saturday, he said, I would like the freeze to continue for a 7th and 8th year. So he'd like it to go 2 more years.
I agree with that because, frankly, we're not ready to undo the freeze. It's not a permanent solution at all. And that's where I think lawmakers need to finally sit down with the universities, go to each single one because everyone is different, and talk to them and find a middle ground of what tuition they need and what costs. Because putting a 20% increase on tuition in 1 year is mad.
When you talk to residents of the 14th District about health care, what are their concerns, Steven?
Oh, there's a lot of concerns. They're concerned that it's way too high, the coverage. They're also worried about existing conditions being taken out. And, you know, my plan is to look at, our state should be looking at how much a hospital charges someone, how much the insurance company is, and what they have to pay out. And I think we should make the hospitals post it on their website. So let's say you go in for a bypass knee replacement, you can look and pretty much shop.
Compare.
Yeah, but also I think we should also be looking at how much of a profit these hospitals are making off of us. Because a bag of saline is $1 to make, or less than $1, but they charge us $136 in some hospitals for it. And that's a gross profit. And that's where I think the government should be stepping in to regulate that.
Would those changes help maintain and possibly expand health care in the rural areas of Wisconsin, do you think, Steven?
Those changes would probably, I believe so, because rural areas, they don't have as much money as city people do. So I see them going to the hospital more because they could afford it. And that's where the draw is we're having right now is no hospital wants to put out a place in rural or provide care out there because people don't tend to go to hospitals because of how expensive they are.
Does state government have a role in recruiting and retaining doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals, or should that be left up to the private sector?
I believe that should be left up to the private sector. But again, if our healthcare is dropping, then yes, the government has a role to make sure we keep that balance of good healthcare.
State government and Delta Dental go together to subsidize some dental services in low-income areas. I don't know if you're familiar with that program, but my question is, should it remain a priority in the next Medicaid budget?
You know, I haven't read much into it, but from what I have read is I believe it should, and maybe even expand on it, because we are now seeing links to dental hygiene, to heart problems, to other diseases as well. And then also, you know, for someone who wants to get a job, they got to feel the best to get that job.
AARP brings up the issue of caregivers, saying there are 578,000 caregivers in Wisconsin who provide care for a loved one or a neighbor, you know, someone who they care deeply about. AARP, wonders whether you would support laws or regulations that require hospitals to recognize and work with family caregivers, when a loved one is in the hospital. Is that an issue that's come up as you campaign?
Not really, because majority of my population is younger. They're not yet retired. So no, it hasn't come up, but I do see in the future we should be looking into that situation. Okay.
Final question. Why should a voter on November 6th go with an independent as opposed to a D or an R?
D or an R? Because I'm not bought by the party. I want to bring politics back to an era where it was founded by our forefathers. Because when have you ever seen a politician come to your area and talk to the people unless it's election year? They don't anymore. And I think that's the direction, that's the problem, and that's why we got ourselves in these situations, is because once they get elected, they don't care about us anymore. And that's where I see myself. I would be greatly honored to serve my district since I do have such family ties in here. My grandpa grew up here, my dad grew up here, my brother lives here too, and so do I. So I have very much invested in this, and it would just be a great honor to serve them.
Steven Shevey of Brookfield is an independent candidate in the 14th Assembly District. The election is November 6th. Steven, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.